My little itty-bitty bruiser buddies.
United States heavyweight champion from Brazil.
The world's heavyweight champion from the AWA, Nick Bockwinkel.
The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
And welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us this week, whichever way you do, by whatever means, whatever platform. We're glad you're here. We have a great show for you. And joining me is a buddy of mine from online, a guy that I've spoke with many times online, but the first time here, actually talking directly to him from the Midwest Territory website. It is Chad French. Chad, how are you doing?
I'm living a dream, man. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Well, thanks for joining us and co-hosting this and helping us kick this show off.
No problem at all.
Speaking of the Midwest Territory, let's talk about that for a minute because you recently transitioned your site over, right? It was long for a long time. It was Chad's an Idiot. So tell us
Chad'sAnidiot.com.
.com, right. So tell us what happened with the transition and give everybody the new website and stuff and tell them what was your decision to kind of rebrand your site a little bit.
Well, when it initially started, it was just me starting a blog, and it went from there to I tried to start helping promote wrestling shows here and there, and then it became me promoting more wrestling shows and me reviewing wrestling shows and more and more and more. And eventually people started taking me seriously for some reason, even though I had Idiot on my website.
Yeah.
So once people started taking me seriously, I had to start really thinking about rethinking the entire setup, and that's what we've been doing lately. We switched it over from Chad'sAnidiot.com, which the site still is technically up. It actually redirects you now to our new website, which is MidwestTerritory.com, which is pretty much piggybacking off a hashtag, which is pretty much everybody in the area from, I don't know, West Virginia all the way over to Minnesota, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
But we're pretty much here just to help every independent company we can get a few more fans, get a few more eyeballs on them. The more we can help one group, the more we can help all groups. So
yeah, and I mean that's the one thing that you've always done. I mean, it's really not even a change in your approach so much. It's just kind of, it seems to me you're just kind of maybe trimming some of the fat, some of the other things. But you've always done show reviews and results. I mean, that's always been kind of your meat and potatoes for your site. So I think it's just kind of you focusing in a little bit, it seems to be.
Well, I try to make Midwest Territory sounds way more professional than anything with an idiot at the end of it.
Yeah, well.
As a rule. So if people are going to start taking me seriously, I want them to actually take this website seriously beyond the area. The people in the area took it seriously even though it had idiot in the title. But for some reason, some people respect my opinion. But with the Midwest Territory site, I feel that more people are going to take the entire thing seriously. And which, if they take me seriously, they respect my opinion, they're going to be fine with what I say about wrestling shows. And when I promote them, hey, you go here, they're going to listen to me a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of the new age of wrestling now, right? I mean, once upon a time back, when I was starting and whatever else, and it was, we went out and we hung flyers, we, stapled them on poles and everything else. And I know maybe some people still do that, but now it's the presence is online, right? And it's the sites and the podcasts and the blogs and the Facebook. That's what's promoting these shows now and getting the word out.
Oh yeah, and it seems like everybody has one, which is a funny thing.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
You can't throw a rock without hitting some jerk on the website.
That's true. Or a podcast for that matter.
Or a podcast, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing though. There's enough room for everybody because wrestling's so popular right now, especially independent wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, there's room for everybody. I mean, and the more people that are promoting this product, the more people that are going to listen to it, the more people that are going to get eyeballs on it, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah. It seems like every week I get messages from somebody of, hey, I'd like to do a podcast. What should I do? And I'm like, I don't know, just what do you like? Don't be just another, Raw SmackDown review show. Everybody does that. There's 50 million of those. Do what your heart tells you. What are you into and what you like? What's your passion? Support that. It's fun when you're supporting what you love and everything else. So,
it's crazy too because when I started out, I was mostly I would do Raw and SmackDown reviews, and I actually still watch WWE.
Yeah.
But the more I got into it, the more I wanted to do the older reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I found was the more page views I would get if I slapped I could slap a turd on the website and put WWE on it, and I would get twice the views I would get anything else.
Yeah.
So I keep doing the WWE stuff because it brings sight to the stuff that I really want to succeed, like the local wrestling and stuff like that. I feel that's the best way of going about it. So if I have to swallow a few WWE turds in order to make everybody else happy, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I guess. I try not to swallow those turds, but you know.
Well, I mean, I didn't say I enjoyed it. I mean, there's still a lot of good WWE stuff out there. But I feel if I got to sit through 3 hours of Raw, which if you'd have told me 20 years ago that I was going to sit through 3 hours of Raw every week, no matter what the situation, I'd have been all over it. When I was younger, you could feed me 10 hours of wrestling a day and it'd be fine. But now I'm getting older. I'm like, well, I'm seeing the same 6 matches 6 weeks in a row. It gets a little old.
It does. So,
and that's the great thing about the indies, because every single indie company has something different. And now they all have similarities, but most of them have something different that sets them apart from the other ones.
That's true. That is true. So tell us, how did you get started wrestling? Tell us about what was your first steps into wrestling as a fan?
My very first memory of wrestling was when I was a real little kid. We lived in Dallas, Texas. And I remember the first thing I remember hearing about wrestling was my mom coming home and saying that Michael P.S. Hayes hit David Von Erich in the head with his cowboy boot. That's the first thing I remember about wrestling. I was probably 5. Since then, I've been hooked. Since that moment. We lived down there for years. My parents used to go to the Sportatorium all the time. My dad actually went to a couple of big shows in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas for world class. Then when we were, I think I was in 4th grade, we moved up here. And then it became a lot of WWF stuff, because it was either WWF or USWA a lot. Because we didn't have cable, like, forever. I think we were in high school before I had cable. So I was able to watch WWF and USWA Championship Wrestling with Lawler and all. Well, before it was CWA. And then they transitioned over in, like, 91 to USWA. But I watched a lot of old junk WWF shows, man. And even as a kid, I loved those. And then I would get action figures, and some of those, like, I remember getting an AWA action figure set of the Road Warriors.
Those are great. The Rimcos.
Those action figures were awful, but they came with a VHS tape of an AWA, just an AWA like compilation tape with it for $8 or whatever it was. I got it for my birthday, and I sat there and watched a Nick Bockwinkel and Vern Gagne in Gagne's retirement match like 50 times. When I was a kid. And I didn't know why I liked it, but Gagne retiring with the title at the time seemed like a really good idea to me. And I just enjoyed the hell of it. And anytime I can, and then my mom worked at a video store after that. So my dad would be at work somewhere else, so we'd go wait with my mom at the video store. And in the 80s, I don't know if you recall the 1980s.
I do.
Some of the newer fans may not even know what a video store is.
No, probably not.
They used to put movies in a big box building. There you could rent them, and if you didn't rewind them, it was $3. But my mom working at that video store, I was able to watch WCW, AWA, WWF, all these old videotapes, and I would sit there and I would just watch the same ones over and over and over and over, and then my fanhood it never went away.
I remember it actually. Somehow, I don't even know how we came about. We wound up when I was fairly young. No, we're not fairly young, but anyway, at fairly young in the technology, we wound up with 2 VCRs. I don't know how this came about. One was a beta and one was a VHS. I don't know how. But anyway, we did. So I would copy the videos from the video store onto betas. We had it connected up so that I could watch the video and watch the wrestling any night, anytime I wanted. And I would just. It was remarkable to me how many times I watched some of those matches, and I don't do that much anymore. I mean, if I rewatch something, it's typically something old, but it's like there's not much now that grabs. I think, I'd like to see that again, or I like and watch it that I could watch over and over again like I did back then.
It's really crazy because I remember how many times I would get WrestleMania 4. And I go back and went back and watched WrestleMania 4, and that show takes about 600 hours. But I always got it because it was 2 videotapes.
That's right.
And when you open the videotape, there's a pop-up of Hulk Hogan. And back in the day, I was a Hulkamaniac, man. I don't care what anybody says. Hulk Hogan used to be the man. As I grew older, I was like, oh, okay, maybe he wasn't. But back then, when Warrior beat him, I cried. I cried like a little bitch. I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't take it well. I don't know what the language constraints are, but I'll edit out the B word in future reference. But
that's
but yeah, I mean, it's just when you're a kid, these things take hold in your brain, and you think they're great. As an adult, WrestleMania 31 was a great show, but I'm not gonna sit there and watch it back to back on a weekend. You know?
That's right. I remember, and I wasn't a huge Hogan fan. I mean, it was obviously he couldn't not get caught up in it somewhat because it was definitely a phenomenon and how popular he was. But I do remember watching him winning the title from the Iron Sheik about 5,000 times because I had some Hulkamania video. It had that. And I remember that, and then I remember this one segment skit thing with him making a protein shake with Mean Gene, and he was putting raw eggs and everything else in it. But I watched. I mean, that the Sheik match was, I don't know, 5-6 minutes. It wasn't even a long match. I watched that thing so many times, and it was.
And if you go, and especially if you go back and watch it now, you're like, this isn't even impressive at all.
No, it's not. But it's, I mean, I knew. I was watching it, and I was watching some AWA before that, so I remember seeing Hogan summon that when he was really starting to boom because they had the ESPN show and stuff, and and somehow we had cable. We lived out in the country, so we were the last in our town to get it, but we still had it. And once we got cable, it's like, I mean, heck, you could watch, you could watch AWA, you could watch the World Class because it had the national show and all the WWE, the NWA, and then where we lived on the antenna, I could get, the station out of Louisville and watch the Memphis stuff out of that.
Oh, yeah.
That Louisville out of that. And then, of course, I was getting the stuff out of Indianapolis when, the stuff that Bruiser was still running through the 80s and stuff. So it's like, it was weird because it's like now I watch a lot of wrestling, but I sit there and I shudder. I think, God, how much WWE's on TV. But back then I was watching wrestling nonstop. I mean, every free time I had, and I never got sick of it. That's
why I was always excited about going to my grandparents because my mama and papa had one of those giant satellite dishes.
Oh, yeah, we did too.
Remember the ones where you could scramble and get station? Oh, yeah. That's where I would get into, like, I didn't even see NWA for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I found NWA Saturday night just over at my grandparents', and I tried to go over to my grandparents every weekend so I could watch 2 hours on TBS, the Superstation.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get cable until, I think I was 14 when we got cable.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was starting to, the Monday Night Wars were just kicking off a little bit. Nitro came on Labor Day in '95 or whatever, and from that point on, man, where my fanhood was before, which was really high, just became nonstop. I mean, I'm taping one of them and watching the other, just every single night. I would tape Raw, or I'd tape WCW, and then watch Raw, and then watch WCW after, because WCW had the replay.
Yeah, right.
WCW would go back to back, and now I can go back and watch all those shows for $9.99 a month. That and AWA and Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and it's just amazing the amount of content you can get these days, and it keeps getting better. Not even just WWE; it's with the indies, it's with everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you love wrestling, now is your time.
Yep, it sure is. I remember when we had one of those satellites, and I remember coming because I would always scan the channels, just trying to find anything. And I remember at one point coming across the Spanish station, Univision or whatever it was, and for the first time seeing Lucha Libre, and it fascinated me. And which is wild. Oh yeah, it is like it was so different. I mean, I could not understand how there were so many like 6-man matches and all. It was so crazy. It was a remarkable. And I had no clue what was going on. It took me forever before I started catching on to the differences in the rules, but I was fascinated. And I've always loved Lucha after that because it was so different. It enthralled me. But it was so crazy seeing something like that. I had read about it in the magazines and some of the, a few of the wrestlers, they mentioned and stuff like that. And, but man, just to be searching through and just out of nowhere find it, it was remarkable.
And that's one of those things where you'd read them in the aftermags, like you'd get Pro Wrestling Illustrated or The Wrestler and all these things, and you'd read all these stories about stuff that you never thought you'd see, then you'd accidentally come across it one day.
Yep.
and that's just, what was the guy that ran the UWF out of Vegas? Not Bill Watts, but the other guy.
Herb Abrams. Yeah.
Herb Abrams, yeah. Mr. Died of cocaine overdose or whatever. Yeah.
He was wild.
And you go back and even watch those shows. You can watch those shows on YouTube.
Yep, I know it.
How crazy is that? I mean, it's awesome.
Some of that stuff was crazy.
If there's something you want to, they just put the last Battle of Atlanta, the entire card on the WWE Network.
Yep, I know it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm very excited. I remember when they put the Buzz Sawyer Tommy Rich match. I could not believe it. The day it came out, I mean, I literally came straight home from work and watched it. I thought this is
it was supposed to be lost to history.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
and then you watch it, and it's just it's just an average cage match. But if you're in 1981 in Atlanta, that was your world. But that was the biggest thing in history.
Yeah, it was so cool because when I was a kid and reading the magazines, there was so much they talked about Buzz Sawyer, Tommy Rich, and this feud that went on for years and how bloody it was. So to get to see it, the match wasn't anything spectacular, but knowing the background and the history of it. That was, reading it part of my childhood. It was so cool to see it. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that it had turned up after all this time. So.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always good to find stuff like that. And the best part to me about wrestling is I can with all the stuff about the Saudi Arabia show today and everything like that. And I haven't even I've been busy all day and haven't had a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
But even with all that going on, I'll get up tomorrow and there'll be something about professional wrestling that just excites me and makes me want to continue to help people out and do what I do.
Yep, it is. It's so well because when I was a kid, like I said, there were so many shows on, and then there was, the tape trading, which I dabbled in that a little bit, and then, newsletters. I got into all that when that was all, and it was such a boom because there was so much stuff, and there was so much merchandise coming out and everything else. And it's wild to see it now because it's like that again, but it's modern. It's, with all the streaming services and the online access and people that are able to merchandise themselves, and have shirts and whatever else, all the different things. It reminds me so much of that peak period of the territory, at least from when I was a kid. And
it's really crazy too, because 98, 90, 97, 98, 99, that area, when the internet started getting behind this stuff.
Yeah.
Like Dave Meltzer was, it wasn't a guy that everybody knew. Then all of a sudden you get Dave Meltzer and Wade Keller and all these guys, they're becoming famous for just, this is going on backstage at Nitro. And you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
and then you start getting behind it a little bit further behind it. Like, you're not just a fan. You're like, oh, well, I don't like this guy because he said this about whoever.
Yeah.
You become an insider or whatever. You're not. You're just a guy reading stuff online, but still, it made you feel like you knew these people a little better. Yeah. And I think a lot of people say that killed it. I think it made fanhood better. To be honest with you, because you're not just invested in the character, you're invested in the person behind the character.
Yeah,
Cesaro's character is pretty garbage.
Yeah.
But Cesaro, the guy, we know he's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're going to root for him no matter how much WWE craps on him. And I think that helps those guys out.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. It's, it is what it is. I mean, it can't be avoided in this day and age with, social media and, guys, the instant gratification that everybody has to have.
Oh,
but
you got to know, yeah.
It's remarkable. It's like, literally, though, if you step away from Facebook or Twitter or whatever for, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours, you come back, it's like you've missed something. There's always something that seems like it's developed or unfolded, and something's going crazy, and it is nuts to me how much stuff develops now. And, I mean, with so many promotions and doing well, and in attendance, for at least for the indies is up and doing well. It's so crazy to me how quick stuff develops now. And I mean, we, like you said, we would read the After mags when we were a kid, and that stuff would be, a month or two behind in the news.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's just, everything's so instant. I mean, it is remarkable. And how you can watch a streaming show or a streaming match from somewhere around the world as it's happening online. It is made, especially as I talked with Andy from the road home and talked about how easy it is for a guy to market themselves now if they want to put the work in and build themselves as a small business, because all the tools are there for them to do that and develop a fan base in a territory or in an area that they've not even worked in yet, to give them some roots there. It's just pretty remarkable.
It is. It's really crazy. We've got a photographer around here. I don't know if you know Robert Mouse.
Yeah, Mouse. Yeah,
a photographer.
Yeah.
Oh, you Mouse. Okay.
Yeah.
His daughter just started wrestling.
Right. Yeah.
And it's amazing how I'm seeing her stuff everywhere, and she's wrestled one match.
Yep, I know.
Like, the kids already got merchandise and stuff like that, and she's going to be a star because she's figured out how to market herself before she even stepped in a ring. That's all you got to do at this point.
It is.
If you have a little bit of charisma, a little bit of talent, and a lot of gumption, you'd be a star.
Yep. It's all about marketing.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's you've got to set yourself apart, and it's the marketing. It's those guys. And you see some of these guys, and you'll watch them, and you're like, they're not the best worker in the world. Or, they're not the greatest. You'll see a guy, but you're like, they've got that factor, that X, what the modern day version of that X factor, and the fact that they can market themselves and they make themselves valuable. And they, I remember I saw Joey Janela when he first started out over in. I went to a show in Jersey. I just happened to be in that area and went to a show, and he was working. He was fairly young, and I thought, man, this kid's pretty good. But he had that attitude about him, and I was like, man, this kid can be a star. And I mean, look where he's at now. It's remarkable. And I always like when you see a guy when they're young and then you see what they do later. And it's pretty wild just to see someone that can,
It's really nice when you watch a guy that when they first started, you're like, what? He's missing something.
Yep.
And then they find that one thing, and it just clicks.
Yep.
Like your boy Mance Warner.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Manser started out when he was down. He wrestled at IWA down here a lot, and when he started, man, he couldn't get the crowd to shit on him. They was just, they didn't care. They just didn't care. And then all of a sudden, one day, something clicks. And when it clicks hard. And then the next thing you know, you're traveling all over the country wressling for everybody.
Yep. When I first met Mance, and I used him on some show stuff, he was not a talker. He didn't have it. He didn't talk and whatever else. I'm like, it just, when somebody gave him that chance to speak, and he ran. I mean, it's remarkable because he had.
And that always. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I would just say
I mean, interrupt.
He came from the School of Rock, and there's all these guys. And when I looked at these guys that were coming out of that class around him, I didn't think Mance was going to be the guy that's going to stand out and jump out of that crowd at first, because I thought he seemed kind of timid to me, and some of these other guys had a little more charisma going on, but he just came out of it and never looked back, and it's crazy.
And that was the one thing that always got me. You'd see these guys that just something about the microphone scares them, and that's one thing that I was never able to get that, because you can put me in a wheelchair, you could stab me, you can do whatever you want to me, but I'm still going to be able to out-talk your ass.
Yeah, I know it.
I'm not a wrestler, I'm not a manager, but I can run my mouth really well.
Yep.
That's the one thing I'm good at. And when I see people that just stumble over that, and I think the only thing they're missing is just a little bit of confidence. If you get that confidence behind you, you can start talking about whatever. And even if you don't 100% know what you're talking about, fake it till you make it, especially in the wrestling business.
Yep, it is. I've always been. That's the way I've always been. I've always been a talker. I've always been that guy all the way through school and whatever else. I was the guy. We'd have a group project. Oh, Dave, you're going to talk. I'm like, all right, whatever. I don't care. Crowds never intimidated me. And then when I started helping, some of the local indie shows way back, and it was doing some flyers and stuff for them, and they wanted to make me a manager because I never shut up. I always talked, and it's funny because it's like in my personal life, away from a stage or away from anything, I'm actually kind of quiet. I pick my words wisely, and some people think I don't like them because I don't speak a lot, but it's not that. I choose what I say. But when you put me in the spot and I have to talk, I can do it. I have no problem. And sometimes they say I don't shut up. My wife would say I don't shut up, and I talk too much. But
my wife says all the time.
Especially about wrestling. She always says that. You never get tired of wrestling? I'm like, nah, not really. I'm like, because just when I get when I get tired of it, there's always something new, something else to watch. I just shift gears, watch something else. But
there's days, man, where I'm like, I think I promoted 11 different shows yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, I'm trying. And then I'll get messages. Hey man, it starts at 7, not 8. I'm like, okay, thanks. I'll go back and fix it. But it starts to wear on you a little bit because you're like working, you're doing 1,000 different things, and you're expected to remember all this stuff. And then some people will say something to you about it, but most of them are just like, thanks for helping or whatever. But every once in a while I'm like, man, fucking wrestling.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's just like doing the podcast. If I'll have a run, string 1 week, where it's like I'm doing an interview every night. And it's like, you look at that and you're like, God, I got every night, I got to do this. But then you get down and I get talking with these people and hearing them tell stories. And I'm like, oh man, it's fun. It's no big deal. It's just chatting. But it's like,
at the end of the day, you're talking about one of your favorite things. So it's not really that bad.
Yeah. So it seems intimidating sometimes. And I always try to, make sure it doesn't feel like work. It's like, I got to keep it where it's fun, or else, I'm not going to want to do it. So.
Oh yeah.
But it's always been the way, though. I mean, this thing's been a passion of mine for 35 years, 30-something years. So it's like, I don't think I'm going to shake it now. I always tell her that.
One of those things that's hard to kick too, man.
It is. And I mean, I've gone through periods where there's the lulls. There are times when I take a break. I don't watch as much, or I step away a little bit and just take a breath from it. But I always come back. It's never any long period. It's always, give me a week or two. I have to dry out.
I was actually like that with indie wrestling for a while because I got busy, and I would go a lot from 2002 to like 2005. Then I took a break for a while. You had stuff going on in my personal life, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And you kind of try to keep up with it. You're like, who the people are, and if you are able to catch them, it's fine or whatever. But I kind of got at it for a little bit. Then I came back, and then when I came back, I was like, well, I'm in this again. Yeah,
that's true. That's the way I was. I mean, I went for a long time. It's just I would just purely a fan there for a while. I would do a few appearances here and there, I did a little bit of a ring announcing from different people, but just spots here and there just would pop. But I wasn't looking for anything, and then just, I don't know, stuff starts falling in your lap, and one thing leads to another, and here I am doing a podcast now all the time. So it is what it is, I guess. Can't shake it.
There's worse things you could be doing, you know.
Well, definitely is. Everybody's got to have a hobby. That's what I always tell them. So do something that you enjoy. So, well, before we wrap this up, Chad, why don't you tell everybody again about your website, how they can access it, and the kinds of things they can look for from you in your site.
Okay, we're MidwestTerritory.com. We actually still have the Chad'sAnIdiot.com if you feel like typing that in. So that's going to be up till the end of the year. We're going to have independent wrestling cards, interviews with some of the guys, reviews on some shows, a lot of promotion. If you're looking for a certain show or anything, we generally get 10 to 15 shows promoted a week, or try to. There's several this weekend. Let's see, Emerge is tomorrow, Black Label Pros tomorrow, both in Indiana. PTW, which is down in Kentucky, Sunday. NWF, which is in Kentucky tomorrow. Then we got actually Bizarro Lucha just took place. I just did the review for that show.
Yep.
And I'm sure they're going to be coming back pretty soon. That's out of Indianapolis.
Yep.
So there's a lot of local stuff going on. IWA Mid-South every Thursday.
Yep.
You can get a hold of us on Twitter at MW Territory. On Facebook, we've got a Midwest Territory fan page. You can go there. It's Midwest Territory. But yeah, if you want to go to MidwestTerritory.com, we have WWE, Independence. We actually cover some horror movies and stuff like that. We've been doing a lot of that because of the holiday.
Yep.
It's a big holiday. We've been working some sports in here, local sports in here lately. We're trying to keep, we'll do everything in the Midwest, and then it pretty much, the title of the website is The Heartland of Professional Wrestling and Whatever Else We Want. So we cover pretty much whatever we feel like. But local wrestling is our bread and butter. Some WWE splashed in there just to get some more readers.
Yep.
So.
Well, there you go. And if you can't get out to a show that maybe you wanted to get to or whatever else, go check out Chad's site. You can read up his reviews and results and keep up to date on all this stuff. Well, Chad, thanks for coming on. We'll do it again soon.
I appreciate the time, man.
That's right. And we will take a quick break. When we come back, we have an interview with Lexus Montez, so stick around. If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com.
And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I'm your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and today I'm joined with yet again another amazing talent. We have today Lexus Montez. How are we doing today?
I'm doing all right.
Hey, rock on. Well, hey, we're all doing great. It's a great night. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first question is always, where are you from, Lexus?
I am from the Midwest area, Cincinnati, Ohio, to be exact.
Rock on, Cincinnati, Ohio. One of the best places in Ohio, if you ask me. How was it growing up in Ohio? Is that where you were born and raised?
Yes, I was born and raised in Cincinnati, and it was, I guess it was pretty normal. Like, I just grew up really around the city area, so I'm a city kid, so everything I see in Cincinnati, from, like, Bengals games to, like, Reds games, has always been, like, fairly close and in my reach to be around, and just watching the city evolve from it was very rough at some certain points. We are famous for the Cincinnati riot that happened here in the early 2000s, and also us having terrible sports teams. So yeah, Skyline Chili, also Skyline Chili.
You know, I like me some Skyline Chili. I can't lie.
Absolutely, absolutely. That means we don't have any heat, because I love Skyline.
That's right. Yeah, I love Skyline. You know, what's the other one? Gold Star Chili? Gold Star Chili.
Yeah, Gold Star Chili is no good. Yeah, no good. No good.
Anybody who likes Gold Star Chili, no good, guys. Go elsewhere.
Absolutely. Anybody who likes Gold Star Chili has instant nuclear heat with me. So
instant nuclear heat. We're talking like category 4. We're done. Like
Yes, yeah. 5 even. We're going to 5.
We're going to 5. DEFCON 5, right?
Yeah, it's bad.
Wait, is our DEFCONs, is that sequential? Is it 1 or 5 that's worse? I don't know.
I think 5 is the one. Like threat level 5 or something like that.
That sounds right. I don't know why we're talking about DEFCON 5. Anyways.
It's all good.
So, growing up in Cincinnati, did you play in I know you talk about sports teams a lot. I didn't know if you play sports personally yourself, anything you were really into?
Absolutely. I played football. I found out I hated football very early on. Soccer. I played basketball. I wrestled in high school. And, yeah, that's really about it.
Yep, I too hated football. I never got into it. It was not my dig. I was more of a baseball guy myself.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite. I can't ball.
Really? Oh man, I love baseball.
Yeah.
You know, I like playing it more than I like watching it, but I can still watch it from time to time. I can definitely tell you that watching it gets boring.
You see, actually, that's what I hear a lot. It's better to play than to watch, because watching baseball is like watching paint dry, to be honest with you. And I can't see the appeal of playing it, since there's not a whole lot going on, and it's sort of like a chess game where you have to like wait for things to get in place. I never got into baseball.
Hey, you know, and that's absolutely okay, because you're both right. It is like a chess game, and you know, there's a reason why I stopped playing it, because it gets a little old after a while. I'm not gonna lie to you. But
it's crazy.
It is. But let me ask you, so obviously we talked a little bit here about some sports. Did you ever watch professional wrestling as a kid? I don't know, because some people say, oh yeah, I've been watching professional wrestling my entire life. Some people have now got into it. So have you been watching that for a while?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the cliche answer is I have been watching wrestling my entire life. I think the first wrestling match that I ever saw, I don't know what year this was, but we're going to say circa 96, so I was 3 years old, maybe. And was it 96 or 9? I don't know. It was okay. So to paint the scene, it was The Rock versus Stone Cold in a cage match, and that was the first wrestling match that I saw.
Very nice. So that's always kind of been there for you. As a kid and as you grew up, did you have any favorite wrestlers? Anybody have mentioned that you were always like, this is who I like aspire to be?
Absolutely. One of my favorite wrestlers growing up and now is Chris Jericho. I will never forget when he came out to the Count Raw that night. He came out, and it was very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Chris Jericho's a really good one. I feel like a lot of people, he's kind of underappreciated nowadays, I feel like, but he's fantastic. Easily one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes. Then, no, absolutely. So obviously, you know, you can be a wrestling fan all you want, but eventually that urge to become more than just a fan kicks in. So when did you know wrestling hooked you and that it was something you wanted to do?
I would say, probably around that time. I always was like so addicted to wrestling, so I would watch Raw and Nitro. And then I got older, and me and my friends decided to start our own little backyard league or our park league as kids, not in backyards. But it focused me on being a wrestler, and that was like a big dream of mine when I was a kid. Even at 11, when I said that's what I wanted to do, and now is it's very surreal in a lot of ways, and like somewhere in time, like my 11-year-old. It's a dream come true in ways.
Right, absolutely. So then, obviously, you know, to get into wrestling and to take that next step or leap, if you will, you get trained, obviously. So tell us a little bit about your training. Who trained you, and how'd you get into that?
So from the Cincinnati area, you have a few options to choose from, I guess, in training-wise. Right. You had the gone my train, which was like 4 years ago. So HWA was gone, and then you had area, which was and at the time I didn't have a car, so I couldn't travel up there. I lived in a place called Camp Washington, and area was the Northern Wrestling Federation, and Roger Ruffin was the head trainer there. So I took my to the NWF, and I started training there 4 years ago.
Wow. So, and Roger Ruffin, obviously, he's a name from the business that I've heard before. I think we've even talked to him before, and obviously he's got a pretty good, I would say, repertoire within the industry for his works. So definitely that was some. I would imagine that's some pretty good. That's a pretty good starting place. But
yes.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. Like, yeah.
I was just making sure. I sometimes cut people off, so if I cut you off, just talk over me. No, I'm kidding. But
oh, you're good. You're good.
So then, obviously, you're training. That comes and goes, and eventually you step into the ring for the first time as a competitor. So tell us a little bit about your first match.
Yep.
What was that match like? Who was it with?
Well, to set up the whole scene, I was working job to job, like jobs in Walmart at the time that this happened, and it was around March 13th. And I'd be at every show, and basically just like that, just young jobs. And I remember getting off work, and I couldn't make it to the show because it already had started. And then I remember stating that, asking me where were you? Where are you? I've worked, sir. And then he hit me back immediately and was like, if you plan on wrestling, you might want to get down here. So I dropped what I was doing and rushed and walk in the door, and I have my gear bag with me. Always have your gear bag, guys.
Right.
And basically, I suited up and I wrestled a guy known as Agent Herzog, and that was my first ever match in March of 4 years ago. I'm going to butcher the time, though. March 13th, 2014 is when I had my first match.
Oh wow! So that's an interesting kind of introduction into the business in that manner, because they're just like, yeah, get on down here, and you're just all right, and then just drop what you're doing and go. So that kind of shows some dedication to the. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was super weird because I didn't to put that on me right there to wrestle earlier that month, because if anybody who wrestles to wrestle knows that you'll keep the same job, but if not, you're going to burn through job to have your first wrestling as a whole, because every weekend is busy,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, kind of good beginnings here. You had some good training. You had a very interesting introduction into the business for your first match. A little bit of a surprise, but you were ready for it, obviously. Like you said, always carry your bag.
Always. Yeah, absolutely, always.
So then I guess the next thing to look at is you not only did you started in 2014, like you'd mentioned. You started in the business, I feel like, in a really good time for independent wrestling, because independent wrestling is insanely good and crazy and just awesome right now. So, you started in the business when independent wrestling was at its peak, and it's continued to go up and up and up. So, in your opinion, what do you think the best and the worst of independent wrestling is?
Oh, man. You got... Okay, that joke.
Are you still there?
Independent wrestling, the good thing about it, huh?
Oh, sorry, I thought I lost you.
I made a little joke in that. No, I made a joke in it. Shoot, dude, where do you start with?
Right.
Good things about independent wrestling is that you can create memories with it. You can create a everlasting impression on yourself and then on people in the business or even fans that get to see it at such, I don't want to use low level because I feel like that's taking away from it, but at a level that isn't necessarily a grand stage like WWE or anything like that. it's very good for that. Memories are definitely good. Relationships as well. Relationships with people who you can consider your family or your brothers. Wrestling, I've noticed over the years, being in the business for such a short time, is a club, and I mean it's very oriented around relationships and brotherhoods, and it's of having those hard times together. So if you go through the negative times with those who are with you, then it creates a brotherhood. It creates a bunch of understanding between you and your opponent, or you and a friend in the locker room. Sharing the car with people and going up, good thing to have in your memory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the good things. The memories are your good things about independent wrestling. That drive to get to the next level and to get just to get an understanding of what you're doing in the business. About independently, or I would even just say wrestling as a whole, is just the idea of the toxic, and sometimes that subculture that we live in as professional wrestling or independent wrestling can be very, very stifling, and it can be very, very Groundhog's Day-esque. And I've been in situations like that, like every day is the same day when I come to wrestling promotion where something's going on. The idea that wrestling is such an old sport where things carry over in this tradition, and I'm isn't always best. I feel like things need to change with the times. A lot of negative that goes into independent wrestling, like promote, call it anyone or anything like that. Not good shows and not a goof show. Man, just a whole lot. It's a whole plate of knowing when to step, knowing when to, just have that goal to be like a spot. I know I'm going off on a tangent a little bit about the negative, but it's a lot,
No, absolutely. And I think that's honestly, I feel like, and I guess this is a little bit of a tangent as well. I think that a lot of people hold wrestling to such a high standard and a high regard that they're oftentimes willing to overlook the bad. So I think that,
Yep.
Our podcast, and again, fans out hate me, I think our podcast being a platform for workers such as yourself, people who are in the business and who are active, giving people like you a platform to say, this is what's bad about wrestling, is very helpful, because I feel like that helps people understand the possible toxicity of the culture that we live in. But that's just my 2 cents.
Absolutely. And you know what? You have every right to say that, because and I think that a lot of people don't understand the idea of a podcast as a podcast, because I'm also a fellow podcaster, so I understand I understand where you're coming from, because I've been outed about doing a podcast and being called well, it helps the sport of wrestling. It's a platform to give it like we're a standing ground to be just, hey, we're not just guys in the ring. Right. We're also guys that can talk in conversations and be and just to be involved in the real world, because guys aren't involved in the real world. They're just involved in the subculture of professional wrestling. So
absolutely. I 100% agree. Definitely. Pardon me.
You're good.
So I guess to get a little back on track, because I feel like we go on a lot of tangents. For anybody who listens, we go on a lot of tangents. T-shirt that says that. But other than the goods and the bads,
absolutely. Hey man, tangents create some random tangents content.
Absolutely. And I cannot remember who it was that I was talking to. Who I can't remember. I've talked to so many people. But we always go on these random tangents, and I can't remember. They said, they told me that you like to talk about random stuff, and I said that's probably a good thing. Probably a good thing they warned you.
Absolutely.
No, I kid. But Now, I guess a little about you, because I want to focus a little more on your career so far. Like you said, you've been wrestling a little bit here. You've been working for about 4 years. So far, what would you say is your the top highlight of your career, personally?
Let's see. The top highlight of my career would be I trained in the New Jersey, and I did that twice. I did that in March. Did that this past, early October, October 4th. 5th, actually. Sorry, October 5th. Those are two big highlights because I'm a really big New Japan fan, and I'm a big fan of fighting spirit, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention that's a fantastic dojo to work in. I mean, that's I feel like a lot of people who come out of that, they come out, they come out a lot stronger, a lot, I guess you could say a lot more solid as a performer. So definitely, I mean, that's really exciting though. That's awesome. But I guess to kind of follow up on that a little bit too is having been working for the years that you have so far, you probably have worked quite a few places, traveled quite a bit, but where all do you currently work pretty regularly?
So I do a tri-state loop around this area, which is Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. I've worked in West Virginia. I've worked in Pennsylvania and in California. And also, I'll be working in Michigan pretty soon in November.
Very cool. If you had to say, because obviously I don't want you to be like, oh yeah, this is my favorite place, but is it like a favorite part of the country you'd like to work in?
Let's see. I don't know. That's hard because I haven't yet where I can say, hey, I like working in this part of the area. Because, well, for me talking right now, gels together. Every crowd seems to be the exact same. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but that's kind of the answer that I have. Being able to work in these different places, but I don't know. I can't really answer that. They all gel together.
No, that's understandable. That's understandable. They all gel together a little bit. That makes sense, especially when you work so often. I mean, from the sounds of it, sounds like you like to work pretty consistently. So I'm sure you've probably seen a lot, and you're just like, yeah, sometimes this blends together just a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
That's not a problem. And then I guess kind of along the same track. I mean, you probably travel a lot. So when you travel, do you usually travel alone, or do you have a group of people that you like to travel with?
A bit of a lone ranger when it comes to travel. A lot of guys that I work with in wrestling, they don't, not to talk down about travel a lot. So it's more so me going by myself to said destination. And it's just one of those things that you're going to have to deal with in the world of professional wrestling.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, independent wrestling, traveling is the biggest key to making money, is the ability and willingness to travel.
Absolutely.
So having traveled as much as you have, do you have any funny road stories or show stories from your travels?
Let's see. I remember one time working in West Virginia. This is just professional wrestling. The venue we were working, we wrestled outside, and it started raining. And the show, our show hadn't started yet, so it was kind of all right, are we going to cancel this show, or what are we doing here? To make a long story less long, the show didn't get canceled, so I ended up wrestling in the rain, and not in a cool Okada Suzuki style. It was more and I'm working in the rain in this ring that's probably going to kill me. And my gear was super wet, so that's one of those things.
A lot of people have those restrictions when they get bookings. Maybe working rain was not a good one.
Yeah, it was just okay. It's raining, and we're working this festival gig and like a fair kind of thing, and it was raining, and it was like, hey man, I don't know if these people are going to sit out here for the rain. And they really did, and it was just mostly kids, and they wanted to see guys wrestle. Like the biggest pop I got was doing a headlock takeover, and I was like, this is weird. It wasn't very fun.
You're just like, I'm kind of confused about these fan reactions. I don't really know what to go with it with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you go like certain things pop certain people, like some people in this area, they want to see high spots. Like they want to see you flips. Like that's the only thing they've seen in this building or in this promotion.
Right.
You flips a million times, there's a high spot. So that's what they want to see. Chain wrestling or, work a spot or just work in general. They want to kind of see you do balls to the wall, daredevil, devil may cry-esque things. And you can't really blame them because they're getting what they paid for.
Right. Absolutely. Can't blame them. That's true.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of a little more on the Midwest side of wrestling, like you said, born and raised Ohio. There's recently been kind of a resurgence of Midwest wrestling, as we've seen. More people are kind of flocking to Midwest wrestling. We're seeing a lot of great talent come out of the Midwest. And with you and your travels, do you feel like you're representing the area when you wrestle of the Midwest, that is?
Yes and no. I have a weird relationship with that. Who want to represent the Midwest to the best of. I have a weird selfish thing when I wrestle. Like I wrestle for myself. To say like, I'm out there just like getting myself over. This is a dream of mine, and this is kind of something I want to have as a long-lasting career.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a love.
Absolutely. And I think that the love-hate is a good thing because you're not going to sell yourself short, which is what you don't want to do.
Yeah, like I could love the Midwest forever and want to be here forever, but then that's selling myself way too short when I have bigger goals and aspirations to. Not to say, this isn't helping me get those things. I want to reach the end of my my tunnel, so to speak.
Right. Well, don't go towards the light quite yet.
Not yet.
Stupid dad joke, but no. But so definitely, and that's another thing too that I feel like a lot of people do is they sell themselves short or they kind of restrict themselves. And definitely you don't want to do that. You don't want to stay in one place. You should always, if you can, of course, travel. I feel like that's a lot of what the old timers, I guess, would say is travel if you can.
Absolutely. Definitely travel if you can. Anybody who's listening to this wrestler-wise, definitely travel the best way you can, whether it's, the cliche, jumping in any. I've done that before, and it's honestly led me to no match, but I've been company understand how to really talk to people. Like, for instance, TIW in Cleveland, and I was there. The boys from Jollyville. I don't know if I can cuss on this podcast or not, but I'm going to use their other alias, the boys from Jollyville. And they wrestle up there pretty frequently. And was like, hey, make some friends. And I love like Adam Cole, Eddie Kingston, Ethan Page, Shayna Baszler, Mia Yim, DJ Z, like all these guys who are like very popular on the indies. And I'm just like some guy from that wrestling, right, guys? It would just be like a super awkward conversation.
That's funny, but also to answer your question, you are definitely able to curse on this podcast for future reference.
Oh, okay, absolutely. I didn't want to throw out other moniker, and you just go like, "Well, on this podcast." So, but
yeah, well, this is a family-friendly podcast. There are children listening. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if there are children listening. If there are children listening, I guess cover your ears? Question mark.
For sure.
As well as wrestling, something that I learned about you via my research is that you have some other things that you do. So tell us some of your other combat sport training. I believe is Muay Thai one of those. I feel like I got a note about that.
Yes, I train in the art of Muay Thai kickboxing, the art of 8 limbs. I've been doing that for a few years now, and I've also been, like I said before, I trained in mat-style wrestling. So those are my two other skills that I have.
Absolutely. And I mean, tell us a little bit about Muay Thai. What is that for you? And do you compete? Is that something that you compete in? I'm not really well versed in it, so if I sound ignorant, I probably am. But
You're good. You're good. No, Muay Thai translates. I've been a really big fan of Muay Thai and like martial arts since I was a kid. I did when I was a kid and Kung Fu and all that stuff. But Muay Thai was the thing that always stuck with me because it used arts as a limb. I mean, as a weapon. So the art of 8 limbs, you could use your other weapons and other means to inflict and also defend against opponents. So that's a very good thing. I picked that up ironically from the game Street Fighter. I don't know if you're familiar. Hopefully you are, but with the character Sagat. Sagat was definitely one of my favorites. And if I didn't pick Ryu, if I didn't pick Ryu or Ken, I was definitely picking Sagat. To me with his art of Muay Thai and just, being a big fan of Kung Fu movies and watching movies like The Protector, where you have a guy doing Muay Thai to save his pet elephant is amazing. And it's a very, very hard and grueling.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure that something of that nature takes a lot of dedication as well, because I think any sport takes a lot of dedication, but especially something like martial arts, I feel like it takes a lot to do. And also Sagat.
Yes, absolutely.
He has an eye
patch.
Correct?
No, I do not. Yes, Sagat has an eye patch. He's bald. There's another character that inspired me, get a hold of Muay Thai. To answer the other question that I do not compete in kickboxing or MMA. If push came to shove, I would love to compete in amateur kickboxing tournaments. That would be something I would like to do, but wrestling is very tricky, so I would have to make time to do that.
No, yeah, wrestling is a very demanding beast, if you will. It takes quite a bit of time. Takes a lot of time out of your life. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, I guess kind of switch gears a little bit, and then we'll, I guess, go back to the original gear. But a lot of the time when we wrestle, like people wrestle and they do all that, a lot of people know their in-ring persona, ring moniker. But what are you like outside of the ring? Do you have any hobbies, anything that you do for fun, other than wrestle, of course, and Muay Thai?
Yeah. Yeah. So I do podcasting. Right. I've done 3, 4 podcasts, and one of them is wrestling related, one of them is just live, and then the others are like slice of life talking head segment related. I love podcasting. Podcasting is awesome. It's a very good medium to have in the art of communication and the art of creativity. I feel like for that, and I think podcasting right now is at an all-time high. Podcastings are like opinions; everybody has them, and the good ones, or the ones that you enjoy the most. Other than that, I made music for a while, and it kind of got dull, and I was like, I'm going to do something else, and I finally took up the wrestling route. Other than that, man, I'm very boring. I like to wrestle. So wrestling has become like to just be around a wrestling ring and then think about wrestling. Most days when I'm not wrestling, I'm watching New Japan World right now as we speak during this interview.
See, that is what we call dedication and borderline obsession. No kidding. That's a good thing, though. If it's as you're loving what you're doing, absolutely okay, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And that's okay. Literally, and I feel like a lot of people know this already, but outside of the podcast, literally, I'm the same way. I'm pretty boring. I pretty much, I go to work, I come home, I do podcast related stuff when I need to, and then I just watch TV, play video games, do whatever else I need to do. Just live your life, man. Even if it's boring, live your life. That's what I say.
I second that.
But I guess a little more, I guess you could say, on the same mindset, but also on a different mindset. We are approaching the end of 2018. It's crazy to think that we're literally, today is like the halfway point through October. But we're almost through October, getting towards the end of the year, and 2019 is literally around the corner. So what are your goals for the remainder of this year going into next year?
Let's see. I want to finish 2018 strong.
Right.
Be healthy, in wrestling and not get hurt or anything like that. Because I need to do. It's a very, like just being able to walk away without any major scrapes or bruises.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a good goal. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of people don't think as a driving factor, and I think that's very important. So definitely respect for that. Do you have any big events coming up here in the end of 2018 at all?
Not that I can see in the foreseeable future. I just know that I'm going to be working some shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose maybe to give you also another platform, where can people follow you, like on social media, so that they can see where you're going to be performing?
Me on Twitter at Suplexine and on Instagram at Prince of Sport 1993. So that gives you a telltale sign of how old I am.
You said, okay, I'm gonna leave it alone. No, it's only 93, man. It's only 93. I think, I don't even know what year I was born in. 95, maybe?
93, yeah.
I think I'm 2 years younger than you are. So pretty close. But anyways, so yeah. Awesome Possum, though. So real quick, did I just say Awesome Possum? I think I did. Anyway.
You did. I let you rock with that.
You know what? I'm going to have to reconciliate myself in some way, shape, or form, because I really just said Awesome Possum. Anywho.
Yeah, man, and I have a saying in life. I say, you're living your best life, and I can't.
That's right, living my best life.
So I can't stop you, man.
That's right. I'm pretty shit for that here in a little bit. He's going to listen to this recording. He's going to be like, did you really just say Awesome Possum during our fucking podcast? Like, but anyways.
Absolutely.
Before somebody else gives me crap saying Awesome Possum. So everybody who's sitting out there right now listening to me ramble on about the fact that I said Awesome Possum, go follow this guy on Twitter. Go follow him on all of his social medias for multiple reasons. A, you're definitely going to want to see what we're doing and all of that good jazz, but also you need to support independent wrestling. But before we close out here, I first of all want to thank you for coming on here, Lexus, and just talking to us and, really just giving us a little insight into who you are as a wrestler and also as a person. Definitely has been a lot of fun getting to chat with you. Definitely. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
And then for everybody who's out there, like he said, he's probably got a podcast or something, right? So you might want to go check that out also.
Yeah, so you can catch me on the Road Home from Wrestling pod, and I'm on that podcast usually. My good friend Andy, also known as Drucifer Jones, is the host of that podcast, and he would probably love for newer listeners, to definitely check that out when you can. Like the tri-state area of wrestling, like Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. So if you're familiar with shows like Northern Wrestling Federation or PW Rockstar Pro or Paradigm, well, not Pro Wrestling Freedom, but Paradigm Wrestling, check that out. And yeah.
Absolutely. And also Drusifer Jones, I'm pretty sure he was like a guest co-host on our show not too long ago, which that's a hell of a name, Drusifer.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you, Lexus, for coming on here. Thank you for sharing everything with us. Thank you for giving our listeners something else to listen to, because I'm sure they're tired of hearing me. But thank you so much for coming on here, and again, just giving us an insight into who you are and what you do. So definitely, everybody, check them out and go watch them wrestle. Of course, stay safe out there, Lexus. Like you said, the goal before the year: don't get hurt, don't get injured. We're counting on you. All right.
I'm going to try the best of my abilities, man. I guess I got some matches coming up to push my limits, so to speak.
Whatever happened to you?
And we're back with Whatever Happened To, the segment where we catch up on some often overlooked names from Midwest Wrestling's past. I'm Mike Isaacs, and today we are chatting with none other than Shark Boy. How are we doing today?
Hey, I can't complain. How are you?
Oh, can't complain either, living the dream. Well, hey, we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So, Shark Boy, tell us how you got started in wrestling. Actually, before I do that, you were trained by Les Thatcher, who we actually had recently on the show. Is that right?
He opened up a wrestling school in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I was students that he trained at that facility.
Wow, right on. So then, obviously, Les Thatcher is a very well-known name, I feel like, in Midwest wrestling and wrestling in general. So that must have been amazing. What was that like getting to train with him?
Well, I really feel like I lucked out. There's so many, schools that aren't reputable. They're not being run by people who actually have experience in the business. I was very fortunate to meet Les when I did, and I actually got to be trained by someone who was in the business. So yeah, it was incredibly fortunate on my part. I tell wrestling, potential train before I say, this is it's like building a house, and without the foundation, without a good solid foundation, the house will just fall down. So I was lucky enough to lay an extremely solid foundation by training with Les in Cincinnati in the late 90s.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that's a good analogy. Without a good foundation, you don't get much out of it. Very similar to that of a house. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, when new students come in, a lot of times they'll tell you, here's the gimmick I want to have. This is what I want, my character to be. It's what I want my music to be. And that's like worrying about the curtains. What color the curtain's going to be in the kitchen? That's the last thing. The last thing you need to worry about is learn how to lock up, learn how to run the ropes.
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
Breaking your neck, all those sorts of things. Psychology, storytelling,
No, absolutely. And I think that's actually another good analogy. It's like worrying about what the color of the curtains are going to be before you've even built the kitchen, right? So absolutely.
Exactly.
So then, obviously, that was how you got trained. Prior to your training, obviously, I get some mixed answers on this sometimes, but have you always been a fan of wrestling? Is that something you've always been of, since you were little?
I became a fan around the age of 11 years old. My first wrestling memory was Jimmy Snuka and the Coconut, Roddy Piper on Piper's Pit. That's the first thing I really remember seeing that made me go, what is this? I have to start checking this out. I want to watch next week. So,
right.
Yeah, I was 11. I wasn't a fan since birth. Nobody really big wrestling fan. I was kind of the first one to get into it, I think.
No, yeah, absolutely. So then, that's actually a really good memory to have. I knew exactly what you were talking about with the Piper's Pit. So obviously, you kind of grew up in a good era of wrestling that kind of produced, obviously, some love for the passion and then the wrestling and whatnot. And like we said, you trained, of course, amazing training with Thatcher. And then eventually you debuted, which, if I'm not mistaken, was for HWA as El Piranha. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the first match I ever had. I think it was May of '97 was when I debuted as I think the character was similar to what happened was I actually went to work for Ian Rotten's group down in Louisville, Kentucky, IWA Mid-South, and Ian, looked at me and said, well, I like the character. I don't like him. They had recently had a character named El Perro on the show, and so El Perro was just kind of, that turned into this brainstorming session backstage, and somewhere somebody, Shark Boy, and a few other names got thrown around, and Shark Boy, we kept coming back to that, so, that once I was little Shark Boy, there was no going back from there.
Right, absolutely. So then obviously, basically you were like, okay, yeah, El Piranha is great and all, but then you're like, okay, let's try and move on from that. And like you said, you went from El Piranha to Shark Boy, which obviously Shark Boy is how I remember you, because I remember, I when I was younger in the Midwest, I actually remember seeing you wrestle at HPW, and then of course later on at TNA. But actually, something else that was kind of interesting about that, that persona is that it kind of opened you up to a lot of different things. One of those things is that you were a part of Discovery Channel Shark Week early in your career. What was that like?
I think that was around 2000. If I had to guess, or 2001, it was around then. They contacted me, and I was kind of blown away. It was just kind of a thing where they said, we do all these sort of pop culture shark references as part of Shark Week, and we'd like to include you as, just like a little, I think it was maybe a 2-minute segment on me or whatever. But yeah, that was a really neat experience. I mean, obviously it was, it brought the characters living rooms, that weren't necessarily wrestling fans, but maybe just, obviously fans of sharks, but are, they weren't necessarily wrestling fans though. And so sort of to the mainstream television audience, and it gets incredible ratings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good way to kind of, like you said, kind of get a little bit of a foot in the door with people who may not be wrestling fans, kind of like you mentioned. But and eventually you continue to gain attention and popularity, and like I mentioned, you eventually kind of landed yourself a spot in TNA Impact, and with TNA Impact being what it was at the time, that was a pretty big deal. Gained a lot of success with that. So what was it like being with TNA in those early days?
I mean, it was incredible for me. For the WWE purchased CW, and basically it was sort of like Coca-Cola bought Pepsi, and there was only cola to choose from. And here's this upstart group trying to make something happen in the wrestling business and try to solid number 2 company for American wrestlers on television. And, I was excited to be a part of it. I was excited that I got in on the ground floor, and I was originals. I think I was on maybe I don't know how they ever did. I was involved in it. Yeah, that was a really big deal, obviously. And I spent career with TNA.
Right, absolutely. And kind of like you mentioned, TNA was a little bit different than the product that we had. So I feel like TNA had a lot of good heat going on at first. So definitely that's also where I know you from personally, is that other than like the small stuff from when I was a kid, TNA was like that thing that I started watching too. So I was like, oh hey, yeah, I know that guy. But so then TNA being TNA, a lot of great stuff came out of TNA. One of those being that you tweaked your gimmick to be a tribute to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was breaking into the business, the Monday Night Wars, where everybody was watching the Raw versus Nitro, and could do a really killer rock impression. He would call and leave me voicemail. I can't do it, or else I would, or else I would tell you what he sounded like, what he said. But they were funny, and I thought, I've got to be able to counter this. I know I can't do this. I don't do a very good. But one guy I figured I could do would be Stone Cold. So I started watching a lot of his material. I bought one of his tapes, and I mannerisms, how he talked and the way he sounded. And so pretty soon I developed a pretty decent Steve Austin, even messages back. We would go back and forth, and that's just kind of how it all started. This really goofy thing. Well, fast forward to early to mid 2000s. TNA sent a small group of us 2-week promotion for TNA Wrestling in India, and it was myself, Sanjay Dutt, and Simon. While we were over there, Sanjay, his family from there, and so he sort of understood the call. He wasn't totally out of place there, whereas Simon and I was much a culture shock. So sometimes it felt like we were the only 2 people there. Not that Sanjay wasn't with us or one of us, but like he a little more comfortable with the culture than we were. So Simon and I we spent a lot of time hanging out. And, we got into talking about who our favorite wrestlers were, and he right away says Ric Flair. And we started just kind of trading Ric Flair promos and impressions and things. And I said, one of my favorites is Stone Cold. And I just kind of launched into some of my Stone Cold stuff, and he just loved it. He just ate it up. He said, man, it's so funny. So everywhere we went, he would say, hey, Stone Cold, what do you think? He's a piece of trash, and he needs to move his ass a little bit quicker and get over here and take care of us. And I would just launch into the Stone Cold up, and we drove Sanjay absolutely nuts. By the end of the tour, he was like, please, can I stop with the Stone Cold stuff? So we get back to the United States, and Simon starts having me do the impression of everybody at TNA who will listen. I'm doing it for everybody backstage, messing with people, and finally we get to Jeff Jarrett, and I do it for Jeff, and he hears it, and he says, I love it. He goes, you need to do that on TV. We're gonna do that on TV. That's kind of how it was born right there.
Wow. So, he's just like having you do it for everybody, and he's just like, hey, Jeff Jarrett, just listen to this real quick, and you're just like, well, here's my impression of Stone Cold Steve.
Yeah, and I just launched into it, and, he's cracking up. He said, that's something to do with your characters is have you do that impression. So he come out and just be Stone Cold. And at the time, I was in the middle of a storyline where every week I was coming out all bandaged up. I was getting beat up, and next week Shark Boy comes out with, ribs, and after that he's limping on a crutch, and there was, tape on my mask. It was just getting worse and worse. And I said, Jeff, let's have somebody put me in a coma. And when I wake from the coma, I think I'm Steve Austin, and that way there's like, in a way, it's an exploit for the character. We're not just going from one to that thing right there in the middle. So the company bought me, they bought an elaborate bedroom set that looked like I lived aquarium, and it was one of the coolest things. I wish my own bedroom actually looked like it. It was really, really neat. And they made this incredible elaborate bedroom setup, and they just, Eric Young, a glass on the ground. When the glass fell and shattered, I woke up, and lo and behold, I sound.
And that's one of those great things too that like TNA could do, but like I don't think anybody could do nowadays because just how people handle wrestling and how people kind of view it. But that's like one of the greatest things ever, right there. I mean, so it's it's kind of silly, but also kind of awesome because like I mean that's just good storytelling, even if it is about something sort of off kilter a little bit.
And they called the episode "A Fish Out of Water." All the episodes had titles. And at the time that it aired, "A Fish Out of Water" was the highest rated episode of TNA wrestling up to that time. I think that record stood for a week, beat it the next week or 2 weeks later. But at the time, everyone tuned in to see what was going to happen with this thing, which was amazing.
Oh, absolutely. So I guess kind of a question I have for you, kind of in relation to that actually. So like, obviously you did the Stone Cold impression. You did the gimmick that kind of paid tribute to that. You did all this great stuff with that. Did you ever talk to Steve Austin ever? I mean, I don't know if that was ever a conversation that was had. I'm not sure if he was just like, oh, maybe I should call up this, Shark Boy guy and give him peace of my mind. Was there ever an interaction between you two at all?
Never directly, no. But what happened was, I did the impression, and we started doing it on TV, and I told everybody right away. I said, listen, if Steve Austin has a problem with this, I really, I would have just voluntarily said, I really don't want to do this anymore. let's go a different direction. I didn't really want to do anything to upset him. It wasn't meant to be disrespectful. It was been parody than anything. And so then, I'd done the impression a few times. And somebody comes up, pats me on the back at TV, and I turn around, and it's Kevin Nash. And he says, hey, Shark. Really? He likes it? Yeah. He says it's really funny. He thinks it's great, And then I heard Stone Cold say some things in some interviews where I was one of his favorite TNA characters, and he really liked the, he didn't think I did a very good impression of him, but he liked it and was entertained by it, etc. So he through his support and was just incredibly classy. Didn't have to do that, but he said, "Hey, man, if the kid can make a $1 doing it, then go for it. So be it." So I've always really respected that and appreciated that, and to me, that just shows you what kind of a class individual Steve Austin is.
No, absolutely, and that's great too, because he could have definitely pulled the well, it's my gimmick and blah 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 blah. He definitely could have gone a different direction with that. So big props to Stone Cold Steve Austin. More than the props that he has, because he's already a pretty cool dude, but definitely mad props.
Definitely. Like I said, if he'd had a project, I wouldn't have been comfortable going forward doing it if I found any, when I found I sort of more or less had his blessing, it was such a relief. It was like, well, now I can just really let loose and have fun with this thing. And that's pretty much what I've done ever since.
No, absolutely. And so definitely, we've talked, a little bit of kind of about that progression from, your different personas and the gimmicks and whatnot, to kind of everything in between. So, I guess kind of the next thing I would want to ask you personally here is that, you're still working shows. But as you kind of look back at your career so far, out of all the things that you've been able to do and been able to accomplish, what do you think is your favorite highlights? What stands out to you about your career?
Well, an early thing, Brian Pillman memorial shows, and from 1998 to 2001. And those shows, for those who don't know, they were benefit shows for his family when he passed away. And what happened was, for the first time in the business, the WWE, WCW, ECW all sent talent to the same show to help raise for the Pillman family. And I got to be a part of all those shows, and it was such a thing that, where the entire industry had their eyeballs on it. Everybody was looking, and that sort of what I think was probably my first big break, was to be on those shows. And one show in particular was the second show we did in 1999. We had a cruiserweight tournament. It was booked in such a way that it came out on top and won the thing. Had to wrestle 3 times and at Cincinnati Gardens and win the thing. So I won the tournament, and my dad happened in attendance. And, I mentioned before, nobody in my family were really big wrestling fans. So my dad hadn't been to very many wrestling shows in his life. And, I was told that in the moment when I was held up in the ring, it was a big moment. Mick Foley ran out there, Al Snow, D'Lo Brown, Conan, Rey Mysterio, Road Dogg. All these guys came out and, lifted me up in the air, and from all different wrestling companies. It was really an amazing moment in my life. And I was told that my dad, who was sitting, and my wife at the time, my girlfriend at the time, he teared up. It was a big emotional moment for him, and so that meant the world to me, because it was sort of like I had his blessing to be a wrestler, and that he realized what I had accomplished, and I'd really kind of, I'd reached a certain level where I was achieving my dream. And I think that was a huge moment for me. Something obviously I'll never forget.
No, absolutely. That's a great, awesome. That's a really good, obviously it's a great story, but I'm sure it's a great memory too, because, there's a lot that kind of goes into that. And like you said, that's that was a good thing to do just in general, because you're wrestling for a good cause, but also you were in a very good situation, very good, positive environment, it seems like. So it's awesome though. You don't really hear a lot. Obviously that was a few shows. There's not a lot of people who probably have good stories about those benefit shows that I've ever talked to. So it's really great to hear something like that. Because we've actually been able to talk to Brian Pillman Jr., who, he's a great dude too, and he's a really awesome guy. So, anyways,
Yeah, I knew Brian only like 5 or 6 years old when those shows took place. So that was probably the last time I ever saw him. He was a really little kid.
Right.
He was at those shows, and we've since spoken a little bit on one of the cool things about being a part of social media is you can just kind of catch up with people out of nowhere. And I didn't know he was on Twitter, and I think he found me or whatever. So on Twitter, I wish Brian nothing but the best, man. Obviously, a tremendous amount, and I'm glad to see he's doing so well. He's obviously starting to make his own name in the business. That's fantastic. I'm happy.
No, for sure. And, he's, for people out there who are listening, if you want to hear more about Brian, he's actually been on the show a couple times, so feel free to go look there, and also feel free to find him out there. He's a pretty awesome guy. But, so, a little bit more, I guess, to kind of follow up on what you'd mentioned there, kind of about, one of those highlights. Obviously, you're still continuing to go out there. You're still continuing to go out there and work and, run shows and whatnot. So, where do you see your career going forward here? I mean, you're continuing to make highlights, continue to make memories. So, where do you see yourself going from here?
I'll continue as long as I can. I enjoy doing it still to this day. I had my first match. The body won't let me do everything that it used to.
Right.
I think it's actually sharpened for the business. You have to. You got to do that to compensate. Your body can't do what your body can't do. Your mind has to make up for in this business. So, like I'm at, from a performance standpoint, I'll still give it my best. I still want to entertain the fans. As long as I send the fans home happy, that's really all that matters, So I still want to be. In terms of where I could probably make the biggest impact in wrestling right now would probably be behind the scenes. I would love to get involved in other ways. I would like to transition into that work in the business. And I'm in a point now in my life where I just tend to start spending more time with my families. The fact that I don't work as much doesn't bother me at all, to be honest. But if I could transition into sort of a behind-the-scenes role with a company, I would love to do that. So if there's a company out there that thinks someone with my experience would be beneficial, get a hold of me.
Right. Absolutely. And I guess kind of to wrap it up a little bit and kind of to go off what you just said, how can people get a hold of you? How can people find you on social media, follow what you're doing nowadays and all that good jazz?
I'm glad you asked. Same website. It's sharkboy.net. You can get on there and actually send me an email directly from the website. That website will kind of tell you what I'm up to, and you can get merchandise. I'm going to have some more. I can't keep masks in stock. They just seem to get bought up. I'm hoping to have some more so people as Christmas presents. So sharkboy.net is the web. Twitter at sharkboynet. At sharkboynet is the handle. So you can find me on Twitter there. And,
Absolutely. But go right ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that was it. That's that's where you find me. The website, sharkboy.net, at sharkboynet on Twitter. Those are the best two places to get a hold of me. You can email me directly from the website, me on Twitter, and that's the best way to get a hold of me right there.
You've heard him here on the Dave Dynasty Show as a guest and as host of the monthly Graham's Gallery episodes. And now you can hear his stories. You can own a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler, the audio book from Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., former multi-tag team champion in WWA and owner of Bruiser Bedlam. You can hear all of his encounters with the various wrestlers, places, and promotions he's worked as he tells about his colorful, long, and illustrious career. You can have your own copy for only $25, and that includes shipping and handling. It's very simple. Go on Facebook, look up Jerry Jaffe, Jaffe, send him a private message, and make arrangements to purchase a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler now. You will not regret this purchase. And there you have it. Another episode of the Dave Dynasty Show in the books. Thank you for joining us again this week and listening. Special thanks to Lexus Montez, Shark Boy, and Chad French for being part of today's episode. Thank you guys for everything you do, for all the shares, the likes, the comments, the feedback that you give us on social media. If you are not participating in social media, you need to. It's very, very easy. Go to davedynasty.com. Right there, that's the central hub for everything you need. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are everywhere. Go to davedynasty.com. You can find links at the top for all those things. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and whatever platform you listen to the shows. Please make sure you go on and subscribe to us there, share, and like. If you listen to us on iTunes, make sure you rate and review us. We greatly, greatly appreciate that. If you would like to support the show, let me just tell you, the best way to do that is to go to ProWrestlingTees.com/The Dave Dynasty, or just look us up, Dave Dynasty Show, and there you can buy one of our shirts. We have the classic Dave Dynasty show logo. We have the Midwest Express shirts, and of course we have the shirts with part of the money going to Dr. Jerry Graham Jr. and Izzy Slapwitz. So buy one of those shirts, help out the show. We bring this to you free every week. A whole episode full of Midwest pro wrestling goodness. We help support and enrich and enlighten you and teach you about the history. We support the current product where we see fit. So make sure you support us and make sure you help us keep it free. It does cost us money for the equipment, for some of the services we use, the hostings, things like that. So make sure you support us by going to Pro Wrestling Tees, buying a shirt, and things like that. And, the ratings and reviews, all that helps us, guys. So, just take a few minutes and make sure you do. That helps spread by word of mouth. When you see something on social media, just give a share, right? Or tell a friend that might like it and help grow this movement we call the Midwest Express and give us a little more exposure. It's all how we do it. We're one big family working together to support Midwest Pro Wrestling. So thank you for joining us for this episode, right? It was another good episode. Very, very, very much enjoyed it. We will be back next week with our special interview with Larry Henning, the legendary Larry the Axe Henning. We talked to Larry. We will have some guests from the Minnesota area who are experts on the AWA and Midwest Wrestling from that part. They'll come on and they'll talk a little about Larry. Of course, we will interview him and talk about that. So it's a very, very cool episode, very, very special episode. You want to make sure you check that out next week. And until then, I am Dave Dynasty. This is the Dave Dynasty Show. Thank you again for joining us. And until next week, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.